today's topic is RTI Act, Right to Information Act. Now we can see this RTI Act in the news for various reasons. And recently, this was in the news because there was a debate as to whether the PM Cares Fund, which was raised by the Prime Minister, falls under this RTI ambit or not. Important information which some people have asked, like how the allocations are taking place in this PM Cares Fund. How is the money being spent? Such questions were asked, and there was a statement given by that particular public official that PM Cares Fund doesn't come under the ambit of RTI. Now, this has been made a petition to the Supreme Court as to asking whether this PM Cares Fund comes under RTI or not. That Supreme Court will be deciding. So, in this context, we'll try to know how effective is this RTI Act and what are some challenges in this RTI Act and why people are saying that PM Cares Fund has to be under RTI Act. We'll see all this, right? So to start with, Right to Information Act is basically to enable the right to information for the people. So it basically gives people the opportunity to ask information from the government. Simply saying this is the RTI Act. This enables people to access each and every information which the government is doing from the government itself. This is the RTI Act simply. Now, why is it in the news? One thing we have discussed, it's in the news because of the PM Cares Fund issue. Now, people want to know, they want to have transparency in this PM Cares Fund allocations issue. How is the process actually taking place in this PM Cares Fund? That is the reason why this RTI is in the news. The second reason is there were recently amendments done to this RTI Act. RTI Act was amended in the year 2019. So because of this also RTI is important for us. And the third reason is recently the Office of Chief Justice of India is also brought under the ambit of RTI. That means RTI is now applicable to even the Office of Chief Justice of India. This was also recently declared. So with respect to all these issues, we need to know in detail about some important provisions and challenges of this RTI, right? So coming to the origin of this RTI, how did this RTI origin? How did this RTI culture origin in India? In one of a landmark judgment of Supreme Court in the year 1976, the name of the case is Raj Narayan versus State of UP. Raj Narayan versus State of UP. In this judgment, in this case judgment, Supreme Court gave a statement saying that right to information is integral to freedom of speech and expression. Article 19. Now, why did Supreme Court say that? Supreme Court said that right to information is integral to freedom of speech and expression. It said that this RTI or right to information will empower the freedom of speech and expression. Only when citizens have the information, only then they can actually hold the government accountable. Only when people know what the government is doing, only when people have all the information, well informed information about the government activities, only then there is a meaning for freedom of speech and expression. This is the logic put forward by Supreme Court in a landmark judgment. With this, the RTI has gained significance in India. There were some civil society movements also demanding for RTI. As a result, the government has introduced Right to Information Act in the year 2005. Right? So in this way, RTI culture has increased in India. Now this RTI Act is basically for ensuring individuals or the citizens of India have an opportunity to ask information from the government. How should they ask? Whom should they ask? In how many days will they be getting? What are some of the areas where government cannot disclose the information? All these things are included in this RTI Act. So to begin with, what are some objectives which the government has thought in bringing this RTI Act? Some of the important significant things that can be achieved by this RTI is, first one is it empowers the citizens. It creates awareness among the citizens. It gives an true picture, a 360-degree view of what government is doing to the citizens, right? So empowerment of citizens is first objective. The second objective is RTI will definitely improve transparency and accountability in governance, right? Now, when the information is openly given to the people, it is transparent. And also, if there are any mistakes, then people can ask the government, right? So in this way, people can ensure accountability of the government for their actions. In this way, transparency and accountability will improve. This is the second objective. Third objective is RTI also has a good potential to prevent corruption. Corruption can be reduced up to a major extent because all the activities of the government now will be known to the people. So this is the third objective. The fourth objective is, it is in sense enriching democracy. How is it enriching democracy? It is encouraging public participation in the democracy. By creating such an RTI Act and by creating some institutions that will deliver the information to the people, government is increasing accessibility to the people to the information. In this way, people are also in some sense will get that interest to know about government activities. In this way, public participation is increased in the democracy, right? So it enriches the democracy. These are some of the objectives: empowering the citizen, transparency and accountability, preventing corruption, and encouraging people's participation in the democracy, right? So these are some of the significant objectives of RTI. Now, what is the process? How is it done? We need to know this also briefly. In order to know what are the challenges, before that we need to know how this RTI works. Basically, after this RTI Act, in all the government institutions, in all the government offices, all the central, state and local body offices, public information officials are set up. These public information officers, like PIO, these are known as PIO. So a PIO is set up for almost all the offices of the government, center, state and local bodies. What do these PIOs do? We need to go and file a request asking for information to this PIO. Then this PIO, the public information officer, will decide and give the information to us. This is the broad mechanism, right? So this PIO is responsible to give the information. And what is the time frame? Within 30 days, within 30 days of me filing the request for information, PIO is supposed to deliver the information, right? So 30 days is the time frame. And in some cases where it is related to life and liberty of an individual, PIO is supposed to deliver the information in 48 hours itself, right? In 48 hours itself, he has to deliver the information. So in this way, PIO is the official who delivers the information, and this is the person by which we can get the information. Now, if PIO denies the information on some grounds, if PIO denies information, he says information can't be given, or if a person is not happy with the information he got from the PIO, in either of the cases, he can go for an appeal mechanism. If he is not happy with the public information officer's information which he has given, he can go for appealing. That appeal is known as first appeal authority. This is nothing but a higher official to PIO. He will take up this case and he will decide whether the given information is sufficient or not, or whether the given information is relevant or not. And he will give a judgment. Accordingly, extra information will be provided, or the previous PIO's decision will be withheld, right? So if a person is not happy even with this first appeal authority, then he will go to the CIC, Central Information Commission, or the State Information Commission. So this is the flow. First, we'll go and ask the PIO, the Public Information Officer. From there, we'll go and ask if we are not happy with that PIO, then appeal to the first appeal authority. If we are not happy with the first appeal authority also, then we will go to the State Information Commission or the Central Information Commission, depending on whether the issue is related to state or center. If it's related to state, then we'll go to SIC. If it's related to center, we'll go to CIC. So this is the broad process as to how this information can be accessed from government authorities, right? So this is the overall process. And in this context, we need to roughly know that CIC or SIC, Central Information Commission and State Information Commission, are bodies that are set up under this RTI Act. They are like appeal authorities. As we have discussed, second stage of appeal goes to these people. They will try to decide whether the given information is relevant or any other extra information should be given or not. The final judgment will be taken by this SIC or the CIC. So this is overall the process as to how RTI works. Now there are some challenges in this process. Before going to the challenges, we need to know some important provisions in this RTI Act. Some important provisions. The first one is Section 4 of the RTI. What does this Section 4 of the RTI say? It proposes for suo motu disclosure of the information. Suo motu disclosure implies government, rather than waiting till the people asking for information, it has to give the entire information to the people before itself. Even before people file requests for information, government should transparently disclose all the information which it can to the public. This is known as suo motu disclosure. So this provision is also there under RTI Act Section 4. The second section which is important is Section 2H, that is Public Authorities List. Now under this RTI, what all government bodies you can go and access information. This list basically tells what all government offices you can go and ask information, right? So this list says all the central, state and local body authorities can be questioned under this RTI. So all the offices and the government institutions related to state, center and local bodies are under the framework of RTI. We can go and ask the information. And also apart from government authorities, even the civil societies and the voluntary organizations which are significantly funded by the government. This is important. Not all civil societies, only those NGOs, only those organizations, only those civil societies which are significantly funded by the government are also under the framework of RTI, right? So this point is also important. Not only government authorities, but also those NGOs which are significantly funded by the government also fall under the RTI framework. So this is important because the civil society's point is important, because if we see in the news, there is a long pending demand that political parties had to be brought under the RTI. Now, if we go by the definition of RTI or the provisions of RTI, political parties are not government institutions, but still they are significantly funded by public, right? They are significantly funded by public. If we go by that logic, then political parties have to be under the framework of RTI. And even the PM CARES fund, which we see in the news, which was raised during the pandemic, even this PM CARES fund is significantly public funded. When it is significantly public funded, it has to be under the framework of RTI. This is one argument made in the newspapers, right? So in this context, we need to know that not only government institutions, but also those civil societies that are significantly funded by the public are also under the framework of RTI, right? So now an important provision we need to discuss. We need to be clear that not all information or every information we can access from the government authorities. There are some limitations to RTI also. Now, what are the different grounds on which the government can deny information to a citizen? There are some grounds. Even those grounds are registered in this RTI Act. Those grounds are listed in Section 8 of the RTI. The Section 8 of the RTI basically lists down all the grounds based on which government can deny the information to an individual. First one is privacy of an individual. If anyone's privacy of an individual is at threat because of disclosing information, then such information can be not disclosed, right? So this is first ground. Second ground is national security, sovereignty and integrity. For example, we can't simply use RTI to know some confidential information from the Army, Navy or the Air Force, right? So all those issues that are crucial to national security, sovereignty and security, those things cannot be accessed through RTI. This is the second ground on which government can deny the information to you. Third ground is Official Secrets Act. Now this is an act which basically says there is some information which the government cannot disclose. It actually affects the national security and there are other implications also. So in such case, they can't disclose the information. The third condition is Official Secrets Act. The fourth one is leading to incitement of offense. If there is any such information, if the government discloses that information just because a citizen has asked, that can lead to incitement of offense, like incitement of violence. So such information is also not disclosed by the government under the RTI, right? So this is the fourth ground. The fifth ground is contempt of court. There may be a Supreme Court or a High Court judgment to keep some things confidential. Now, when a citizen asks such information, government is not supposed to give because it amounts to contempt of court, right? So this is the fifth ground. The sixth ground is breach of privilege. There are some privileges for the MPs and MLAs. For the MPs and MLAs in their respective houses, the houses where they discuss, debate and deliberate, there they have some privileges. Now, such information which actually leads to breach of privileges of these parliamentarians also cannot be disclosed under RTI, right? So this is another ground, breach of privilege. The other thing is intellectual properties or trade secrets of third party. Like there may be some intellectual properties of a company, trade secrets, company business secrets can be there. Such information, if the government has about some company, that information also should not be disclosed because it is a third party's intellectual property information. It's a trade secret of a third party, right? Such information also cannot be given. And in case if any information that is disclosed by government has the potential to endanger privacy or life of an individual, that information is also not disclosed under RTI, right? So these are some of the broad criteria based on which government can simply deny information to the citizens. That is privacy of an individual, national security, sovereignty, integrity, Official Secrets Act, leading to incitement of offense, contempt of court, breach of privilege, intellectual properties, and endangering privacy or life of an individual, right? So these are different grounds. Now, what are the challenges to this RTI? Now we have discussed the provisions. What are the challenges? The first challenge which we have to discuss is the recent amendments that were made to the RTI Act. In the year 2019, this RTI Act was amended. What happened in this RTI Act amendment? Basically, prior to this amendment, previously, what was the framework is that this CIC, the body which we have discussed, the Chief Information Commissioners, the appeal bodies, the CIC members had security of tenure up to some extent. Like the salaries which these CIC are getting, the tenure of the CICs was all similar to Election Commission. So some kind of security for their tenure was there. But unfortunately, with the amendment that was made recently, the tenure conditions, that means what is the term of the CIC, how much salary the CIC will get, what are the service conditions for the CIC, all this will be decided by this central government from now. So in such a way the amendment was made so that the tenure, the term, the salary and the service conditions of this CIC body and the State Information Commission body, the tenure and the salary will be decided by the central government. Now, how is this a challenge? This is a challenge because if we try to examine this, because the central government will be deciding the tenure and the salary, security of tenure is not there for these people. Now, they can't act in an impartial way when they know that their salary will be decided by central government. Because these bodies are dedicated for seeing if the government is correctly giving the information or not. So they can't do that job independently. So independence of these CIC people will be at threat. That is why the amendment that was brought recently to RTI is said to be a challenge to RTI, right? So this is the first challenge, the amendment that was made. The second one is attacks on the RTI activists. RTI activists, there are some people who dedicate themselves to simply this RTI activism. They try to bring out the inefficiencies in the government. Unfortunately, attacks on these RTI activists, attacks on these whistleblowers is increasing. So this is the second challenge. Third challenge is, though RTI framework is introduced to reduce corruption, yet still political parties are outside the framework of RTI. Because of this, money laundering through political parties is still going on. So political parties are still not under the RTI framework. This is the third challenge. And what is the fourth challenge? Misuse of the law. So there also exist some sections of society which are misusing this law. Frivolous RTI complaints are made by some people. Frivolous means not so serious RTI complaints, right? Not so serious information. Simply they ask information from the government just because they want to ask. So such complaints or such appeals are known as frivolous RTI applications. So such frivolous RTI or fake RTI applications are increasing. And also our government officials are being harassed by this RTI activists. This is also there. This dimension is also there. So harassment on the RTI officials and also frivolous RTIs misusing this law is another challenge to the RTI. And also awareness among the majority of the sections of people is less about this RTI. That is also a challenge. We have made an RTI Act, but how effectively this RTI Act is reaching the masses, how effectively or how much aware are the masses about this RTI is also a challenge. And the other thing is, as we have discussed, there are a number of grounds on which the government can stop disclosing information. It can just simply deny the information. There are a number of grounds which we have discussed. So there also a major challenge is there. Whatever information, crucial information which is required, that information is simply being denied by the government authorities using the section 8 of the RTI, right? So the section 8 of the RTI in some sense is a problem to bring the transparency in the governance. Citing privacy issues or national security issues, some important information is being denied to the people. That is also a challenge. And also lack of adequate infrastructure and funds. That is also a major issue. So these are some of the challenges. The recent amendments that are brought, the attacks on the RTI activists and the whistleblowers, political parties and some NGOs still not under the RTI framework, harassment on the RTI officials and frivolous RTI complaints, unawareness or lack of awareness about RTI, and non-disclosure of information citing privacy or national security reasons, and lack of adequate infrastructure and funds. These are some of the challenges to the RTI. What should be the way forward? RTI is one such important legislation that will improve transparency and accountability. But then we have seen there are some challenges. How to improve this? The first thing is government should go for suo motu disclosure. Government should go for suo motu disclosure. That means rather than waiting till the people asking for information, if the government itself discloses completely the entire information to the public, then such problems won't be there in RTI. Really, we can achieve transparency, right? So suo motu disclosure is something which is needed. The second thing is misuse of RTI also has to be stopped. This is the second thing. The third thing is protection of these RTI activists and the whistleblowers. These are the people who try to bring the inefficiencies or corruption in the government to the limelight. Now, these people, if they are threatened, then it is serious issue to the governance. So these RTI activists and whistleblowers have to be given protection. So these are some of the suggestions that are made. So the final conclusion is RTI is one such important legislation. It is also known as sunshine legislation. It is called sunshine legislation because it gives transparency to the governance. It is like sunlight that throws light on the inefficiencies and corrupt activities, if at all they exist in the government. That's why it is a sunshine legislation that is very much required for achieving good governance.